In 1941, as the world burned, the United States stood on the edge of war. But here, in the heart of the American South, another war was already being fought. A war not with tanks or rifles, but with dignity, courage, and a relentless dream to fly. This is the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, men who had to conquer prejudice at home before they could face an enemy abroad. Imagine this. It's the early 1940s. Segregation isn't just a social problem, it's the law. Black Americans are told they are second-class citizens, barred from the same schools, buses, and even from serving their country as equals. The U.S. Army Air Corps, the precursor to the Air Force, had a firm, unwritten rule. Black men could not be pilots. High-ranking officials openly stated that African Americans lacked the intelligence, courage, and discipline to fly. This wasn't just an opinion. It was official policy, backed by racist pseudoscience. The door to the cockpit was bolted shut. But then, a flicker of hope. Under immense pressure from civil rights leaders and black newspapers, Congress passed the Civilian Pilot Training Program. Buried in the legislation was a small but powerful provision. Black colleges could apply, and one institution, the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, founded by the great Booker T. Washington, seized the opportunity. This wasn't just about learning to fly. It was a chance to shatter a century of lies. Leading the charge was Charles Chief Anderson, one of the very few licensed black pilots in the entire country. The odds were stacked against them. The facilities were basic, the funding was a trickle, and the entire country was watching, waiting for them to fail. Every single takeoff, every maneuver, every sputtering engine was scrutinized. But in those Alabama skies, something incredible was happening. The first cadets, young men like Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., Lemuel Custis, and Charles DeBow, weren't just skilled, they were flawless. They knew any mistake would be used as a weapon against their entire race, so they simply decided not to make any. Their biggest moment came not in combat, but on the ground. In 1941, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt visited Tuskegee. In a move that sent shockwaves through the nation and horrified her Secret Service detail, she asked Chief Anderson to take her for a flight. For 40 minutes, a black pilot flew the First Lady of the United States. When they landed safely, she turned to the cameras with a smile and said, "Well, you can fly, all right." Her endorsement was a powerful blow against the wall of prejudice. It gave the program a legitimacy that money couldn't buy. Still, the battle was far from over. Even as war clouds gathered, many in the military dismissed the Tuskegee experiment as a political stunt. They didn't see pilots, they saw a problem. But in early 1942, the first class of black military pilots earned their wings. They became the 99th Fighter Squadron, commanded by Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. Davis was a West Point graduate who had endured 4 years of silent treatment, eating every meal alone because no white cadet would sit with him. He knew what it meant to stand tall in the face of isolation. Even as commissioned officers, they faced constant racism from their own army. White soldiers refused to salute them. They were barred from officers' clubs. Their own comrades sometimes tried to sabotage their planes. They were American soldiers, preparing to die for their country, yet they were treated like outsiders on their own bases. Despite it all, they trained with a fiery determination, pushing their outdated P-40 Warhawk planes to the absolute limit. They knew their mission was bigger than the war in Europe. It was a fight for the very soul of America. In 1943, the call finally came. The 99th Fighter Squadron was deployed to the deserts of North Africa. Skepticism followed them across the Atlantic. White commanders doubted their abilities. But Colonel Davis gave a simple order. Do your job, do it well, and the results will speak for themselves. And they did. Flying dangerous ground attack missions, strafing enemy convoys under heavy fire, they performed with breathtaking precision. During the invasion of Pantelleria, their bombing runs were so effective they helped force the island's surrender. The reports filtering back to Washington were undeniable. These men weren't just competent, they were exceptional. But even with victories in hand, the fight back home continued. A group of white officers filed a report, falsely claiming the 99th lacked aggressiveness in combat. It was a blatant lie, an attempt to ground the program for good. Colonel Davis flew back to Washington to face the accusers. With calm defiance, he presented the facts: mission logs, combat reports, and glowing testimonials from the bomber crews they had protected. The charges were dismissed. The truth had won. And that's when their legend was truly forged. The 99th was merged with other Tuskegee-trained squadrons to form the 332nd Fighter Group. They were given new planes, the iconic P-51 Mustangs, and they painted the tails a brilliant, defiant red. The Red Tails were born. For the American bomber crews flying deep into Germany, the sight of those red tails was a symbol of salvation. Bomber pilots began specifically requesting the red tails as their escorts. Why? Because their record was becoming legendary. The bomber loss rate for groups escorted by the 332nd was the lowest in the entire 15th Air Force. The German Luftwaffe pilots came to know them, respect them, and fear them. They called them the Schwarze Vogelmenschen, the Black Bird Men. Through it all, the men of Tuskegee remained humble. They weren't fighting for glory, they were fighting for respect. Each mission was a tightrope walk between life and death, a flight into the heart of a world at war, and on every flight they carried the hopes of millions back home. They were proving, beyond any doubt, that courage has no color. They were not just fighting a war, they were rewriting the future. Their story is a powerful reminder that heroes are forged not in the absence of adversity, but in the face of it. They fought 2 wars at once and won them both. They returned not to parades, but to a still segregated America. Yet their legacy was undeniable. They had kicked the door open, paving the way for the full integration of the U.S. military and inspiring generations to dream bigger. The red tails proved that the sky was never the limit. Imagine this: 1944. The world is at war. A new group of American fighter pilots, the 332nd Fighter Group, is activated. But back home, the whispers are loud. They're just for propaganda, some say. They'll never survive real combat. The man leading them, Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., heard those whispers. They didn't make him angry. They made him focused. He knew only one thing could silence the doubters: results. This is the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, a group of black pilots who fought 2 wars at once, one in the skies over Europe and another against the prejudice of their own nation. Their journey from the training fields of Alabama to the war-torn skies of Germany wasn't just a flight, it was a flight into history. When the Red Tails arrived at their new base in Ramitelli, Italy, it was anything but glamorous. Muddy runways, makeshift tents, and the constant smell of engine oil. But these men were used to hardship. They were a brotherhood, bound by a single purpose. And their planes? P-51 Mustangs, the best fighters of the war. On the tail of each one a splash of bright red paint. This wasn't just decoration, it was a declaration. It said, "We are here, we belong." Their first missions were to protect the massive, slow-moving bomber formations. Their orders were crystal clear: protect the bombers at all costs. While other fighter groups would chase glory, breaking formation to score individual kills, the Red Tails stayed with their little friends. And the bomber crews noticed. Their losses dropped. A rumor started to spread across the airfields. If you want to make it back, get the Red Tail Angels. Even before they got their famous Mustangs, flying older P-40 Warhawks, the Tuskegee Airmen proved their mettle during the Battle of Anzio. Facing superior German aircraft, the 99th Fighter Squadron shot down at least 8 enemy planes with 0 losses of their own. The same commander who once called them timid had to admit they were as good as any group in the entire theater. The experiment, as they were called, was a success. But for the men in the cockpits, it wasn't about proving a point. It was about survival, and the pride of knowing every flight pushed back against a mountain of prejudice. On July 18, 1944, they dove into one of the most brutal dogfights of the war near Memmingen, Germany, taking on nearly 100 enemy fighters. They fought with a disciplined ferocity that stunned the Germans. Soon, even the Luftwaffe had a name for them: Schwarze Vogelmenschen, the Black Birdmen. It wasn't an insult, it was respect. Life inside the cockpit was terrifying. Freezing temperatures, thin air, and the constant threat of anti-aircraft fire. Black puffs of smoke that could shred a plane in an instant. The pressure was immense. As pilot Roscoe Brown later said, "We knew that if we failed, it wouldn't just be us who failed. It would be every black man, every black child who ever dreamed of flying." That pressure didn't break them. It forged them into legends. While other groups averaged a bomber loss rate of nearly 5%, the Red Tails' record was dramatically lower. They flew missions where they famously didn't lose a single bomber to enemy fighters. They weren't just good, they had become the elite. The men they protected called them Red Tail Angels, their guardians in the sky. By 1945, Nazi Germany was on its last legs, but they had a terrifying new weapon, the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter. It was so fast, no propeller plane could catch it. Or so they thought. On March 24, 1945, the Red Tails were escorting bombers on a grueling 1,600-mile mission to Berlin. As they neared the city, the Me-262s appeared, silver streaks of death. But the Red Tails had a plan. Instead of chasing, they used their superior turning ability. In a stunning display of skill, pilots Roscoe Brown, Charles Brantley, and Earl Lane positioned themselves perfectly. In a matter of moments, they shot down 3 German jets. They had defeated the future. This single mission earned the 322nd Fighter Group the Distinguished Unit Citation, one of the military's highest honors. Not every airman made it back. 32 were captured and became prisoners of war. Lieutenant Alexander Jefferson was held in the same camp as the men from The Great Escape. He later recalled the strange irony of his captivity. The German officers treated him as an equal, something he'd rarely experienced back home. He was treated with more humanity by his enemy than by the country he swore to defend. By the war's end, the Red Tails had flown over 15,000 sorties and destroyed over 260 enemy aircraft. They earned 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses. But their return home was not a hero's welcome. They were met with the same segregation they had left behind, ordered to use colored-only facilities on the very bases they served. The war had changed Europe, but it hadn't yet changed America. But their impact was undeniable. 3 years after the war, President Truman signed the order to desegregate the U.S. Armed Forces. Many historians agree that without the undeniable elite performance of the Tuskegee Airmen, that historic order might have been delayed for years. They shattered every racist myth about courage and ability. The skies over Europe were their battlefield, but their true victory was far greater. They didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, they defeated the very idea that a person's worth is defined by their skin color. They rose from the fields of Alabama to the skies over Berlin and, in doing so, changed the course of American history. Their story isn't just about flight, it's about freedom. Imagine a world celebrating victory, cities alive with joy, skies finally calm. For a group of extraordinary pilots, however, this silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of being forgotten. They had risked everything, soared through danger, and returned home not to parades but to a quiet, piercing invisibility. The very world that once cheered their heroism now seemed to have moved on, their accomplishments so remarkable they bordered on unbelievable. Stepping off their planes, medals gleaming on their chests, they were living legends. Some had achieved feats previously thought impossible, rewriting the rules of what could be done in the sky. Yet, back on the ground, life felt strangely ordinary. The rhythm of everyday existence seemed to have missed the memo about their victories. Instead of honors, they faced small daily dismissals, a constant, subtle lack of acknowledgement that stung more than any open hostility. One veteran later captured this feeling perfectly, saying, "We had soared higher than anyone imagined, yet the world acted as if we were ordinary again. It was a jarring return to earth." But these were not people who knew how to give up. Their courage in the skies was legendary. Their resilience on the ground would prove to be just as powerful. They held their heads high, ready for the next fight. This new battle wasn't fought in the clouds, but on the solid ground of a key airfield. Here, they encountered a challenge that demanded a different kind of courage. It wasn't about quick reflexes or daring maneuvers. It was about standing firm for fairness in a system that hadn't yet caught up to their achievements. They sought fair treatment, equal opportunity, and the simple respect their incredible service had earned. Their unified stand was a powerful statement. It sparked attention, not with explosions, but with the force of its conviction. It set a precedent. They would no longer be silent spectators in their own stories. Their message, though met with initial resistance, was crystal clear. Excellence, skill, and integrity demand respect, no matter who you are or where you come from. This wasn't just a fight for themselves, it was a fight for the very principles they had defended in the air. In the aftermath, their paths diverged, but their spirit of leadership remained a common thread. Some decided to hang up their flight suits, trading the cockpit for new careers. They entered fields like engineering, business, and education, carrying with them the invaluable lessons of perseverance and discipline learned at 30,000 feet. They became quiet leaders in their communities, proving that the heart of a hero beats strong in any profession. Others chose to stay within the aviation world, determined to shape the system from the inside. With incredible patience and a clear vision for the future, they worked to dismantle the old barriers. They mentored young aviators, advocated for policy changes, and slowly, painstakingly, helped create a more inclusive and equitable environment. Their leadership was not loud or boastful, it was a steady, persistent force for progress. Small changes began to take root, blossoming into transformative policies that would open doors for countless future generations. They hadn't just won a war. They were now winning the peace, becoming architects of a better world. Time has a way of revealing the truth. As years turned into decades, society began to rediscover the incredible story it had overlooked. A new generation of scholars, storytellers, and filmmakers unearthed their buried journeys, dusting off old records and bringing their heroism back into the light. Their courage was too compelling to remain hidden forever. Films, documentaries, and books began to celebrate their remarkable feats, capturing the public's imagination and inspiring awe. Finally, decades after their initial achievements, formal honors and national recognition began to pour in. Medals were awarded, apologies were made, and their names were etched into the annals of history where they always belonged. But this recognition wasn't just about righting a past wrong. It was a powerful lesson for the world, a testament to the fact that determination, skill, and unwavering integrity can overcome even the most entrenched obstacles. Their story became a symbol of hope. Today, their legacy doesn't just live on, it soars. You can find it in the halls of flight schools where their example inspires cadets. You can see it in museums, where their planes and stories are preserved for all to see. Their spirit fuels educational programs that teach young people about courage and resilience. A new wave of pilots, engineers, and innovators looks to their journey as proof that no barrier is insurmountable. From the harrowing missions they flew to the personal battles they won on the ground, they proved that limits are simply illusions waiting to be shattered. Every challenge they faced, every lesson they learned, and every single act of courage became a thread in a grander narrative of possibility and hope for us all. So, to anyone out there chasing a dream, feeling overlooked, or facing a mountain that seems too high to climb, remember their story. Extraordinary feats aren't reserved for a chosen few. They are forged in the fires of dedication, resilience, and an unshakable belief in your own purpose. That fire can take you far beyond what you or anyone else thinks is possible. So rise up. Keep moving forward. Strive to exceed even your own wildest expectations. The world is waiting for your flight. Somewhere, high above the clouds in the realm of imagination and aspiration, their spirit still soars, a timeless reminder that the greatest challenges can be overcome, and true greatness emerges from the heart of those who refuse to give up. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If their story inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more tales of incredible courage and perseverance. We'll see you next time.